All right, today I am joined by Howard from Muse Games, who's currently hard at work on Embr Early Access on Google Stadia. Howard, thanks for joining us.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
It's great to talk to you. So Embr just launched on Google Stadia. Can you, for people that maybe aren't familiar, that are maybe hearing about the game for the first time, can you maybe explain a little bit about what Embr is?
Sure. It's basically one player or up to four players, multiplayer, rushing into burning buildings, hopefully save lives and make money. You're basically private firefighters using this e-hail app called Embr to rescue people who request your service. So in addition to rescue, you may also be your service may also be needed to salvage stuff out of people's houses, put out fire, keep the houses intact, and also find their treasure valuables. So yeah, there are multiple game modes in the game right now. Sometimes you have to escape your rivals from trapping you into burning buildings, and culminating into a boss fight that we had right now, just like in the first, I guess, district of the game for early access.
Well, that's awesome.
So it's frantic single player and co-op firefighting experience that is also a satire that makes fun of the gig economy and venture capitalism and just this scaling back of public funding.
Right. Yeah, no, it's we've been playing a fair bit of it, and it is a little bit crazy at times when like everything's burning down, building doors are exploding, and you're trying to throw people to safety and you accidentally miss the mattresses. So it can get pretty hectic pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that sums up the game experience pretty well.
Awesome. So in planning and starting development on this game, what were your main influences that you sort of took a little bit of influence from, I guess, to come up with this idea for Embr? Yeah.
So I think the original influence was a really old Sega arcade game called Brave Firefighters. I'm not sure if you guys have checked it out.
Yeah.
But it's basically this arcade cabinet game. It's split screen multiplayer. It had two hoses, and it is at the very, very core, it is like a bit similar to Embr, where you're just like spraying your hose around, you're putting out fires, and maybe like just hitting different objects and getting bonuses and whatnot. And it's this like frantic arcadey kind of experience. And so how we like thought about this idea was that, we periodically we do game jams when we're working on projects. We'll just break us up into small teams and, like up to, let's say, or three people. And we'll just like kind of prototype for, 48 hours and that kind of thing. But this time though, we were basically driving back from this show on the East Coast, this convention on the East Coast called MacFest, and we were stuck in this. I think it would end up being an 8-hour traffic jam.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and so we were just like, okay, well, we got nothing better to do, so we just started jamming on ideas. And this one, we thought about this, and it kind of stuck. We're just like, well, it would be really cool. If we have this firefighting experience, if we can like potentially also make it co-op in multiplayer, so that there's more of a teamwork component in this very frantic, just rushing to burning building, like everything's on fire. You're battling this amorphous AI enemy that is the fire, that type of experience. And I think what also like intrigued us was that we could potentially make a shooter. But instead of like, shooting people to kill, it'll be a little bit Splatoon like, where you're actually, shooting to, save houses and, hopefully save lives and that kind of thing. So I think that kind of, I guess turning the genre on its head a little bit, like type of direction that just really intrigued us as well.
Oh, that's cool. I have played Brave Firefighters before. I think one of my movie theaters had one of the big cabinets there, and I remember playing that a bunch of times. So that is incredibly funny. I'll have to go see if they still have it once things open back up to see if I can play that game again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Awesome. So I know from when we did our first look, we put up some videos. I did some streams, and people were laughing along with me as I was making all sorts of mistakes. But one comment kept coming up is that it looks almost like a VR game, like if you've ever played Job Simulator or other titles like that. So I had to ask, did this maybe start as a VR game, like at its core, but then sort of developed into something that you wanted to have on PC and Stadia?
So we got that comment a lot as well. It's one of the more discussed, basically topic in our forum or in Discord. I think where we got the art, we didn't start off as a VR project. Ended up just kind of had that VR look, game look, and also if you notice that when you're picking up stuff, you kind of have hands or whatever. I think that ended up being more derivative of how we just kind of the technical challenges of how we would parent, how we will connect hand to different objects and whatnot. Like when you're moving things, but the original kind of art and gameplay didn't revolve around VR initially, but yeah, definitely give people that feeling. And yeah, just in terms of working in VR, I think something that will definitely. We'll definitely be interested in taking a look. I mean, we don't have experience developing for VR,
sure,
but it is really cool to see this game in VR. I think how we established our style was actually more of a thought process, and just kind of this art direction exploration of, thinking how comedic or how stylized we wanted the game to be. And part of the consideration was that if we had made a very serious game, it would just be really dark for the subject matter that we are that we are satiring, and I think then it kind of gets into this whether we can help people suspend disbelief and whatnot. So we actually kind of thought this is a pretty cool direction where it is comedic and people will play and they may have a laugh, but then I think it also kind of cuts through some of the seriousness, where people get the message and they reflect a little bit, which is really cool, but then it's not so dark and so over the, beating people over the head with the messaging that, and that type of thing. So I think that is kind of how we decided on the art style and how it morphed into this way. It just so happens that it is, that look is very conducive to kind of the the VR look.
Definitely, one of my favorite titles that I played on VR was Job Simulator. So immediately when I jumped in here and I saw my hands in front of me, I'm like, oh my god, I want to play this in VR. So it was it had that effect on me anyway. But it's kind of interesting that it didn't start out that way. So I guess you're on Stadia. Stadia is a newer platform. So can you maybe talk a little bit about why you and your team chose Google Stadia as a platform and kind of how that whole process started?
Yeah. So I guess it started really when we were exhibiting the prototype, pretty early prototype that we had at the beginning of last year. So we started showing the game. It was just one level. It was really rudimentary art, but we started showing it around at MechFest and at PAX. And I think Google Stadia, they were looking for upcoming titles that could be good fit for the platform. And so we just started to be in touch and be in contact. And for us, I think with Stadia, it's just really cool. The tech's really cool. And it is just really exciting, I think, to support a new platform.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think I think over the course of a few months, we just sort of through our conversation, I think we just decided to give that a go. I think just doing new things for us and supporting new technology, new platform has always been really exciting for us, and I think it's something that we always try to take advantage of. So I think. With Stadia, I feel like what they're trying to do, it's still early. Obviously, they're still hopefully in the early days, in just everything. But we just thought it was really, kind of compelling what they're doing, and it's Google. So
yeah, exactly.
We just thought it was really cool.
Awesome. Well, so with everything that's happening in the world right now, I don't know if your team is mainly focused in one area or if you have people that are kind of all over. How has development been on Stadia, considering that it's, I guess, a cloud-based platform? So being able to jump in, you don't need to take a dev kit home with you when you can't come to work.
Yeah, so we actually still have, dev kits just because it's, faster to make builds. So they do have physical dev kits, which are like really, really cool looking, by the way.
Okay.
So we still work, with just, our physical dev kits. I think when we worked right now, yeah, you're right. I mean, we're all remote. Everybody's remote. I think we just kind of took the gear with us, to our, apartments. And it's been, I think remote working, it's definitely been a transition, but I think by now we're pretty accustomed to it. I mean, we're just on all the different, we're on Discord all the time, we're on, we use Trello to track our, project management stuff. So it's been okay. I think, working with the whole Stadia process, it's definitely, I think anytime when you have a new platform, there are always challenges, just because not everything is, super well established. So I think they're still trying to build up their backend and build up their process. So, processes. And so there are, just things that aren't that haven't really been set in stone. And so I think it's just really for us to adapt and help them, give them feedback on processes and just kind of evolve with, their backend.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that is definitely a bit more overhead that comes with just, having the platform being so new. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but I think we made it.
Has there been a lot of collaboration back and forth between Google's engineers and your team in dealing with aspects and say, hey, this could be better? They seem pretty open to change, which is a little bit, I guess, a little bit different than a lot of the other big platform holders. So has there been a lot of collaboration back and forth between your team during development?
Actually, yes. So I think this is the one thing that is really amazing about Google, or about the Stadia team, which is that they are very involved in communication, and they're very it's really easy to get hold of them to communicate with them, and for them to jump in and help solve any issues with process or their backend and whatever. And so yeah, they're actually really just on a at a human level or at a just interpersonal level, they're actually really, really great with communications and helping devs so far, or helping us really so far to kind of expedite things and getting what we need done and help us solve problems and whatnot. And they've been really, really friendly and supportive. So yeah, that's definitely been huge plus, I think, for the Stadia team. I think a lot of that, it's just there are definitely some inadequacies with their processes and whatnot, just because they're new. A lot of things haven't been completely set up yet, but I feel like they're just everybody in the team is so engaged and involved and just really willing to help. And I think what's also amazing is that Google is a huge company, right? And
right.
They're obviously one of the biggest companies, but everybody everybody in the team is empowered to make decisions and to solve problems really quickly. So that's actually been really amazing to see.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. They definitely seem, especially with Stadia, maybe other areas not so much, but from dealing with the Stadia, they seem able to turn on a dime, which is kind of unheard of. Like when PlayStation comes out with a dev kit or Xbox comes out with a dev kit, you're kind of stuck there. And then slowly over the years of the console being out there, they have software updates and certain things which make life a little bit better. But it seems like Google is quick to say, yep, we're adding this new feature, we're doing this thing. And in talking to various other devs, they seem to have the same idea. So that's really, I guess a good thing to hear, because if you keep your developers happy, you're gonna get a lot more games onto your platform.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So this game is on Stadia right now. It's also on Steam. So did you run into any issues? Like, are you planning on any sort of cross progression or cross play? I guess there is cross play right now between Steam and Google. Is that right? Yep,
that's correct.
So are you looking into anything like cross progression, so you could have one save file if you're playing on multiple different platforms?
I think that is probably something that we won't be able to do unless there is that support between Steam and Stadia.
Sure.
Just because we don't really get players to, register another accounts, with us. So we'll just use people's Stadia account, and we'll use people's Steam account.
Right.
So all their player profiles and game saves are tied to their Steam account or their Stadia account. So I think a long time ago, I think Steam and, for example, PlayStation, I think they had these like cross-platform account support.
Yeah.
So I think in order for that to happen, we'll probably need, the platform holders to be able to have that kind of, cross-platform account support again. But it will be pretty cool.
So you're the first early access game on Stadia, which must be a pretty cool feeling. So what was that process like in talking to Google and saying, hey, we want to enter early access? Is this something that we can do? Was it a hard sell, or was it just something that, like everything else, just kind of fit because of people trying to solve problems and wanting to get the coolest products out there as quick as possible?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it wasn't that difficult, actually. I think, obviously, the conversation we definitely had a conversation about, what early access entails, or what the benefits of early access could be and what the risks are. And I think they were generally really receptive. And, with early access, I think they probably had in mind to have to do something like that, where they can allow games to basically kind of, incubate and, mature, and, for games to really be like, to essentially foster more of a community to help help a game develop and evolve. And I think I would say it's kind of a beneficial experience, right? Like, as long as they curate and make sure that, they're just not like really, really, I guess, just bad games that try to take advantage of the early access process, right. Then I think it should be pretty good in terms of like just attracting more developers and more projects onto the platform, and foster more of a community. So I think generally they were pretty receptive to it. Yeah.
Awesome. So being cross-platform, I'm not sure when you're planning on adding any Stadia-specific features, but have you thought about adding features like crowd play, or maybe even Stream Connect, so we could see if we have a team of 4, we could see someone's on the 3rd floor, someone's on the 2nd floor, and someone's just like in the back looking for money? Are any features like that planned for the future? Yeah.
So some of the more, I guess, more like smaller Stadia specific features are already done. And with crowd play, I mean, we actually did the work, I would say the vast majority of work for it. I think that it's just kind of going through, the QA process, and just to, test and to go through the certification process. So I think in the future updates, I think we should be able to take a crowd play online.
Awesome. So, being early access, do you have a planned rollout of new features? Or are you announcing any sort of like milestones that you're hitting? Are you doing like monthly updates or anything? I've poked around on Twitter and on websites and stuff. I'm just wondering if you've outlined any sort of the plans for the future, content drops and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think internally we already have a plan in place. And we're already kind of working on the next the content for the next district or next neighborhood. So the work has already started. And we'll actually be working on additional game modes, starting with this new game mode called Embr Eats, of course.
Nice.
And we're competing with Uber. We got to have the Eats extension. But yeah, I think as far as a public roadmap goes, we haven't put it out there yet, just because we want to make sure that we can deliver on it first.
Yeah, 100%. That makes total sense.
I think yeah, right now, just because first week into early access, there's just like a lot of fires, right? Like people report a bunch of issues that we haven't really seen before, right. And so we're just going through them and trying to fix as many like bugs that people report as possible. You just try to improve the game and take player feedback and fix stuff, and at the same time balancing new development. So our team's not that big. We're a pretty small team, so I think we just want to make sure that we kind of settle back into a stable routine before we commit to the roadmap.
For sure. And I guess the benefit of early access is having thousands of playtesters out there banging away at your game. Do you have any, like, do you have the craziest bug or weird playtest stories? Like, is your team tracking that and putting those videos up on your private chat or anything? Is there anything that's been just totally insane that you kind of maybe want to add as a feature?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of the bugs, I think what the one really fun part about working on Embr is that a lot of bugs that happen, we kind of just like laugh, right? It's just like really hilarious. I think right now there in multiplayer, there is this bug with the water slide where it could just kind of snap around and just like flail around, and almost like Aladdin's magic carpet. You can like throw it and it would just like run around somewhere and disappears. And so that's definitely been reported quite a bit, and it's pretty hilarious when we see the videos that people grab. Sometimes like your clients will be there would be like collider or collision issues. They'll be like stuck in weird places. I think one streamer found the client like once they got it into the rescue area, somehow like it is like halfway into the ground. And so they're like poking fun of that. So there are definitely quite a bit of like pretty funny and strange physics multiplayer like glitches or like little just little glitches that will happen. That's pretty funny. But yeah, obviously we'll try to fix them up.
Awesome. So during development, what was your biggest challenge? I know I was, for the first little bit when I was playing it, I was looking at your kind of fire physics and how it moves from like the top floor and slowly percolates through the ceiling and then goes down the wall and then engulfs like the various bits of furniture and they basically get consumed. I was like, holy crap, that must have taken forever to work on. So maybe that wasn't it, but what was your biggest challenge in getting the game from that 8-hour traffic jam, figuring out the idea to launching on Stadia for early access?
Good question. I think the fire simulation is definitely a challenge. Both in terms of just like working out, obviously the physics of it. And, so really what ends up like with the fire is actually, it's a kind of a dynamic procedurally, generating and propagating, system. And, it takes, variables such as like, your oxygen level, material, surface, wetness, and really a lot of different factors. And, that actually just determines like, how the fire propagates from, I guess some of the fire start locations.
Right.
So it's definitely, a pretty involved, system, and that obviously fed into other material system. You have water, you have electricity, you have gas, and so on. I think the complexity then comes with, well, how do you expand the system into and kind of package them or craft them into different hazards, and how they interact, and what will be different interesting ways that they interact, and how dynamic it can be, and how do we support that, and how do we expand on that. So that's definitely a set of challenges. And I think the other aspect of that is just performance, because we're
right.
basically playing with two of the most expensive things in game, right, which is water and fire, in terms of performance. So how do we make that performance was a pretty big optimization challenge, because even though stylistically, yeah, it's more stylized and it's more cartoony, if you will.
Yeah.
It's it's still to basically make fire and water work and perform it is still a huge challenge. So just to get that whole system working and perform it, it's definitely a big challenge. Right. I think another probably big challenge is multiplayer. I think when you make a multiplayer game, I think that one of the biggest challenges is going to be multiplayer. So especially, we're doing cross-platform, and we're doing player-hosted servers. So there are, different network environments that we're finding out, some people can't connect, and maybe because, they have some network settings, or they have some antivirus or whatever, things that are blocking connection. And it becomes a challenge to try to have a system where we're structured, where we can actually help players work through that, and try to facilitate connectivity as much as we can, and stability as much as we can. So multiplayer is definitely, it's always going to be a huge challenge.
I guess does Stadia kind of aid that a little bit, especially on the Stadia side, because any player hosted server is kind of a server hosted server, since it's sitting up there in Google's cloud? Yeah,
so I think with with Stadia is definitely, it's definitely more streamlined, I would say. So yes, I think on the Stadia side, this is definitely a better challenge to tackle. I think with I think just on the PC side, just because there are so many different setups that people can have. There's so many different things that people can install on their computers and in their network. It's definitely way harder to try to account for all the different scenarios.
Right.
With Stadia, it's also just one SKU. Well, really one server SKU, like you said. Mm-hmm. So then I think in that sense, it's definitely it's kind of working with other consoles. And in that sense, it's definitely easier to account for.
Okay, cool. Well, we're getting near the end of the interview, and I don't want to take too much more of your time, but maybe I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite thing in the game, or your favorite feature in the game? Is there something that makes you smile every single time you see it?
I use grappling hook extensively.
Okay.
So I think what end up being is that, so grappling hook is definitely really powerful, right? It's a powerful tool in the game, and it sort of get players to approach a level very differently, just because you can scale, you can basically traverse big levels really quickly, and in a pretty satisfying way. Mm-hmm. So I think if people replay levels, grappling hook definitely changes the way people play. But actually, some of these tools, it is just really fun to see how players use the different tools. So, for example, water slides, you can do some really amazing things with it that we've seen. Sprinkler, we had an idea, for example, of how people would use the sprinkler, but actually seeing people use sprinkler on a game mode such as salvage to great effect is really satisfying. So I think sometimes we will craft tools with maybe an intended use case in mind, and just seeing people just kind of take it to a new level. It's really cool.
Nice. Yeah. All the players that are banging away at your game, they're like the Velociraptors in Jurassic Park. They find a way to open that door.
Yeah, no, totally.
Awesome.
So they're impressive. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Howard, for joining us. Where can people find more about your game and find more information about Embr?
I think just for Stadia players, Embr is on the store page. And same with Steam, right? Like if people on PC or Stadia, they go to the store, they should be able to find Embr. Otherwise, I guess, our website is embrgame.com. So if people want to find info there, especially, FAQ information or like troubleshooting information, I think the website is a great place to go.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.